Before we get started, please go over to Amazon.com and grab a copy of my book, Education and Justice. If you have an African-American son in public school, you need this book because I teach you the many ways that public schools mistreat African-American boys and what you can do to help your son. So go over there and get your copy immediately. I did my very first video on Project 2025 in November of 2023. That's right, way back in November of 2023. By then, the Heritage Foundation had already begun to put materials up about Project 2025. Now, that was before they actually released that 932-page mandate. And once released, I created many videos on that mandate itself over 2024. I was also invited to speak to many groups all over the country about Project 2025. And at that time, no one was talking about Project 2025. Project 2025 really didn't get national acclaim until Taraji P. Henson talked about it at a BET Awards, I believe in 2024, had to be 2024. And that's when people then began to talk about Project 2025. And by then I had made multiple videos on how Project 2025 would negatively impact the African American community. And by the way, you still need to know about Project 2025. Go to the playlist of our YouTube channel, and we have an entire playlist dedicated to nothing but Project 2025. And over the next few months, we're going to be replaying some of those videos and others. And I mean, when I say people were not talking about Project 2025, that includes Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Hey, family. Do you believe in the work we're doing? Does our content speak to you? Do you appreciate our in-depth legal analysis and political commentary from an African-American perspective? Do you believe it matters to our community? Then don't just watch from the sidelines. Please click that membership button and become a member of the 2% Club today. That's right, we need just 2% of our subscribers to become channel members. For just $4.99 a month, that's less than 20 cents a day, you'll help us keep creating powerful content that defends our democracy, demands justice, and develops a strong African American community. But if you want more, at $9.99 a month, which is only 33 cents a day, you'll get access to exclusive members-only live streams, bonus content, and behind-the-scenes updates. And for just $14.99 a month, which is under 50 cents a day, our top-tier members get access to live Zone calls, strategy sessions, and a direct voice in shaping this movement. We're not just building a YouTube channel. Folks, we're building a movement based on righteousness and justice, just what our community needs in a time of disinformation and division. So if you believe in what we're doing, click the membership button and join now. Become a member of the 2% Club today. Let's build something powerful together. And you could just say the Democratic Party generally. They simply didn't take it seriously. Again, until Taraji mentioned it at the BET Awards, and people then began to talk about it. And that is the reason why today the Democrats are playing catch up. They're playing catch up now because they did not put the time in to really study what Project 2025 is all about. They literally failed to study MAGA's playbook. So now everything they're doing is a mere reaction to Project 2025. I mean, they got caught with their pants down, literally. So all they're doing now is just reacting to what Trump and MAGA are doing to implement Project 2025. And it is so bad that Trump and MAGA have implemented a majority of Project 2025 in the first 7 months of him being in office again. Now, don't get me wrong, there's still a lot of Project 2025 for them to implement or to try to implement. But the Democrats have been in reaction mode now all year, all 2025, since Trump has taken office. And a lot of that Project 2025 implementation is anti-black, right? We have suffered the blunt of Project 2025. And again, there's more to come. So one of the lessons here for us as African Americans is we cannot depend on the Democrats for much help. We must help ourselves. We must do the work to reverse the damage done by Project 2025. And we've seen that damage with higher unemployment. We've seen it with civil rights offices being closed. We've seen it just across the board, the closing of the Department of Education. All those things are intended to set us back. And the Democrats are not positioned to be very much help to us. So we're the ones who've got to reverse that damage. Now, the Democratic Party is still the only party that has the infrastructure that we need to advance our next phase, the next phase of our movement for full equality. The GOP is and has been for decades, completely, totally committed to advancing white supremacy. That's been their position now for at least the last 125 years. Whereas the Democratic Party, since about probably 1948, with the election of Harry Truman, has shown a whole lot more interest in civil rights than the GOP. The GOP has fought and opposed civil rights, again, for the last 100 years. So the Democratic Party is still the best apparatus for us to initiate the next phase of our movement. It's just that, and I'm going to talk about it in a moment, we got to take over the party. We can't depend on white progressives and white liberals to do it themselves. They are allies, but we need to be in control of our own movement for justice and equity. So in this video, I'm going to offer you some steps that I believe we must take to reverse the anti-black policies of Project 2025. So that's what the rest of this video is going to be all about, how we can counter and reverse the anti-black policies of Project 2025. More is coming. We have 3.5 years more of this, but we can start the process now of reversing some of what they're doing. All right, so let's go to another screen. And we will start countering Trump's anti-black Project 2025 agenda and reversing the damage. Project 2025, let me establish this first, affects African Americans in nearly every way possible. And again, having read the mandate, I can tell you what those areas are. Let's look at them. So Project 2025 rolls back civil rights. All right, just open the manual, start reading around page 561, 583, and other parts. It affects our voting rights. There's been voting rights rollback that they have implemented and are implementing. Page 563, etc. Fair housing rollback. Read page 509 and other portions. I'm showing you that Project 2025 has affected us in all ways. Education rights rollback. read page 319, and there's a whole chapter on the Department of Education, on education generally. Economic rights rollback, page 582 and other parts, but I'm giving you where you can get started. Employment rights rollback, that's covered in page 582 and other parts. Again, I'm showing you that Project 2025 has affected our rights as African Americans across the board. Environmental rights rollback, that's page 417 and other pages. All right, now, having shown you that Project 2025 touch us in many different ways as African Americans, let's now discuss what we need to do to reverse some of those rollbacks. And in short, as you see here, we must fight to win. We must fight to win. And fight to win is really an acronym of 10 principles of African American resilience, excellence, and advancement. So what I'm getting ready to share with you are 10 principles that we can use over the next number of years to reverse some of the rollbacks, in fact, all of them, that Trump and MAGA have implemented through Project 2025. And these 10 principles pay homage and honor to our resilience, our excellence, and the advancements that we've made despite all the hatred that we've dealt with on this land. All right, let's get into the first one. We got to focus on our youth. Why is that? And I made some notes. Because a lot of Project 2025 targets black youth. A lot of it. So we got to pay special attention to our youth, to the next generation. Because, as I've said already, they are trying to close the Department of Education. The Department of Education was doing a lot of things to help African American children with civil rights. And that is the reason why they're tearing it down, because they've always disliked the Department of Education. They've always made the argument that the Department of Education is doing nothing to help children, including African American children. And what's sad is a lot of uninformed or low-informed black people, they help them make that argument, although these people know very little about education. I've heard, for example, Stephen A. Smith talk negatively about the Department of Education, and I can almost guarantee you Stephen A. Smith has not done an in-depth study and know very much about how the Department of Education, through its Civil Rights Division and various rules that Obama and Joe Biden put in place to help African American students. I can almost guarantee that. So departments like the Department of Education, the big, beautiful bill, it also will have a negative impact on our youth. And of course, we know that Trump and MAGA are trying to erase black history. Our children need to know black history. We don't need to have our young people growing up to become adults without any appreciation for what was done for them to enjoy the rights that they have now. Without a solid understanding of black history, they can manipulate our children. And that is precisely what they're doing. That is precisely what they're doing. They're manipulating our kids because our kids are not being taught black history. And a great number of our kids are reaching 8th grade and can't even read at an 8th grade level. We got to intensify and be very intentional about what we're doing to help our children become informed and educated about not only black history, but so many other things, so that they can grow up to become contributors, positive contributors to our community first and to America, right? And they're also using the low information that they're getting from a lot of public schools, they're using that as well to manipulate young black men. That's why I say we got to focus on the youth. And they've also used Project 2025 to redirect Title I funds to white school districts, taking money from low-income, high-minority school districts and giving it to the states, which will definitely direct that money to majority white school districts that don't really even need the money, quite frankly. Pell Grants are being eliminated. Student loan forgiveness eliminated. These things all help our youth. So we as a community, as a people, as an ethnicity, we, in order to reverse Project 2025, we got to focus on our youth like a laser. Like a laser. All right. Now I got 10 things here. I can't talk about all of them, but so long in order to keep this video, within, some minutes here. But I will be talking more about these things because keep in mind, I'm not just creating videos. I am building a movement. And the name of that movement is right there. AMCA. AMCA. Right there. It's AMCA. You see it. AMCA. African Americans mobilizing for kingdom advancement. It's not just about videos. For me, it is a movement. And you need to be connected to this movement. All right? I know where we need to go. I know how to get us there. All right? So focus on our youth. All right. Now, on a personal level, invest in stocks, bonds, mutual funds, etc. I am not a professional financial advisor, so that's not what I'm saying here. I'm not offering you financial advice. I am saying to you what the Bible says to all of us, and that is we need to have multiple income streams. How does that connect to Project 2025? Well, if you haven't read, go back and watch some of my videos here recently where I talk about how Project 2025 has increased black unemployment. Why is that? Because Trump is using his anti-DEI war to fire a lot of black federal employees. Disproportionately, black women are losing jobs left and right because of Trump's anti-DEI war. I covered that in a recent video. And that unemployment is spreading across our community. So how can we make up that income? Well, one excellent way is investing in stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and so on. Now, again, I can't give you any professional advice on that because I am not an expert in that. But I know the stock market has been a reliable place to invest for the last 100 or so years. You just need to educate yourself. You need to study. And by the way, let me say this. It is a whole lot better than investing in cryptocurrency. A lot of black people are running to cryptocurrency, and they're the ones who are not making any money. And in fact, some of them are losing money, while the folks at the top of crypto are really making the money. What is a much better way is the stock market. All right. The various ways that people invest in stocks and bonds and mutual funds, etc. Learn that. That's solid. That's been solid for 100 years. Now, a whole lot of economists are concerned with the way that Trump is using tariffs. But, if you just, again, educate yourself and talk to the right people and learn the right things, you still can make money investing. During COVID, people made a lot of money from the stock market while everybody else was losing jobs and so forth. A lot of people made a lot of money investing. So that's a way to increase your income stream. In fact, a Pew Research analysis from 2021 showed that only 18% of black households own bonds, stocks, or mutual funds. Only 18%, whereas 35% of Asian households and 35% of white households invest. Black people tend to have all of their wealth in their homes. Okay? But we need to diversify. All right, number 3, we need to grow black businesses. Now, integration was mostly positive because before then, we were separate and unequal. But one of the negatives of integration is that we abandoned our economic base. So if you go in any city in America where there's a substantial population of black people and go to the so-called black side of town, you will observe that our economic base was abandoned by African American people, and it pretty much doesn't exist. So where we once owned businesses, such as banks, insurance companies, and so on, those buildings are either torn down or they're owned by other ethnicities, all because we abandoned our economic base. But again, integration is mostly positive, but we did not integrate the correct way. We completely left what we had built in order to be a part of what they built. And now we need to go back and rebuild that base, that economic base. It's true here in Dallas. You go over into South Dallas, what used to be a thriving black community doesn't exist anymore. Because, of course, when integration came, black folks abandoned black businesses and went over and started shopping with the whites and the Asians and the Jewish people and so on, thinking that their products were better when we needed to have been investing in our own. I've been preaching this for decades. We've got to restore our economic base, and this is a great opportunity to do so. So more black-owned businesses. More black-owned businesses. And the thing with investing in black, especially investing, is Trump doesn't, his DEI policies won't interfere with your ability to invest in stocks. No one knows your color, your race, or anything. It's just you and your money. It's just you knowing how to invest your money. And with black businesses, of course, he has control of the federal government, so he can enact policies to impact whether black businesses can, for example, get small business loans. And let me shout out Joe Biden, because Joe Biden and Kamala Harris increased the number of small business loans to African American businesses to a historic level. Many of you probably didn't know that. You don't know all the things that the Biden-Harris administration did for the African American community. In fact, Kamala Harris promised to give black-owned businesses, those especially owned by men, black men, I think it was like $20,000 for business startup. And yet an increasing number of black men voted for Trump. And he offered nothing. And is now targeting black men with his taking over cities and sending the military and militarized cops and so on. So we need to grow our number of black-owned businesses. Also, as a community, we need to help harness a robust legal challenge to Project 2025. You say, well, how can I help? I'm not an attorney. Well, here's how you can help. You have legal groups out here. For example, the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, who has for the last century been fighting these battles. It was the Legal Defense Fund that desegregated public schools. Thurgood Marshall led the way in that fight, desegregated colleges. So they've been fighting this fight a long time, but you know what they need? They need money. They need money. They need more black support, more financial support from the black community, because litigating these cases are expensive. We litigate civil rights cases with our firm, and it is expensive. And they don't do it to profit. They do it on behalf of the black community. So they may, in most cases, they don't get a settlement or jury verdict because they're taking those sorts of legal issues that impact the community and not, one person whose rights have been violated. So go and help them, financially support them and us, but especially like, again, the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. The Urban League is also involved in national litigation on behalf of African American people. Go help them. You know who typically gives those organizations their most financial help? White people. Yet those groups are helping black people because most of us don't support them. So we got to fight MAGA in court, and we need you to help those organizations and others fight MAGA in Project 2025. And again, the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, Urban League, even the ACLU are fighting on a national level. You remember back here, Sona Scotus said you got to have a class action lawsuit before a judge can issue a universal injunction. The next couple of days, it was the NAACP Legal Defense Fund that filed the class action lawsuits on behalf of those Latino plaintiffs. Okay? And the fight to save Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. Who's fighting that battle? The NAACP Legal Defense Fund. And I believe the ACLU. But they need our help. All right? What else? Turn from disinformation to experts. Turn from disinformation to experts. All right? Turn from the disinformation. There are pro-black imposters out here who have told our community for years not to vote. And if you think about it, what other community tells their people not to vote? You don't hear Asians telling Asians not to vote. You don't hear Hispanics telling other Hispanics not to vote. You don't hear Arabs, and you definitely don't hear white people telling other white people don't vote to get the attention of this party or that party. Yet the pro-black imposters have ran with that message so much that a lot of our young people either don't vote or they vote for Trump, largely because of black content creators. And look at the impact. Look at what the black community is now facing because those people were telling blacks not to vote or support Trump. And they're still telling them that. They're already telling them don't vote in the midterms. You got some content creators out here who tell black people that voting does nothing and hasn't done anything for black people. We got to turn away from that sort of disinformation and turn to the experts on voting. Why am I going to listen to, and why should you listen to someone who has no expertise on voting tell you not to vote? I've already acknowledged that the Democratic Party has a lot of work it needs to do, right? That it has problems, it has issues, but not so much so that we need to be voting for the white supremacists or helping them win by not voting. No, we need to double our voting so that we can take over the Democratic Party and tell it what to do and how to advance our agenda. Turn from the disinformation. Number 6, turn to God and his kingdom. Amka, African Americans mobilizing for kingdom advancement. You may not know what I mean when I say kingdom, but I've talked about it in other videos and more is coming. But let me tell you, God's kingdom is coming. It's here now, but it's coming even more so. That is the reason why you're seeing America become so weakened around the world, because there's a replacement coming, and it's God's kingdom. But even before then, God's kingdom, which is established on justice and righteousness, is precisely what our community needs. We need to be demanding justice, racial, social, educational, economic justice, while at the same time, we need to be living right. Those things will improve our community. And of course, I'm going to talk about this because in addition to being an attorney, I'm a minister and have been for 40 years. I know God's kingdom is the solution and the only solution for the African American community. I got a video coming out on that, so I will explain more about that in that video. All right. So we're walking through that Fight to Win acronym. The TO, fight to, TO. The O, organize and mobilize and unify our movement. So we need to mobilize. We need to organize. And we need to unify so that our movement can become strong. Now, let me really try to get this point home. Because if there's anything I see, when I was reading Project 2025 nearly every day last year, it is amazing how organized MAGA is. They're not just out there running their mouths. They are very, very, very organized. They have think tanks. They have corporate donors. They have law firms. They are organized and well funded. And we can't do that oftentimes because there's so much beefing and disunity and self-hate and arguing and bickering and fighting amongst ourselves. And they know that. They're oftentimes behind that. They're oftentimes behind the disunity and the fighting and the division and the beefing. That's what they want us doing. And let me tell you, when I say us, not only us African Americans, you know what? Wait, I'll talk about that in just a second. In fact, the very next point, I'll talk about unity. So we need to stop allowing them to defeat us through division, through beefing, foolishness. We need to mobilize, organize, because our enemy is. Wow. They are organized and funded to the teeth. And that's why they've been able to get their agenda across. Because they are very, very, very organized. MAGA is organized. I want AMCA to be as organized. Okay? Next. So now we did fight. We just finished 2, TO. Now win. Fight to win. The W in win is work to build a black, brown, and other non-white coalition. Now, some of you are going to say a lot of things, because this same group of pro-black imposters, they pump a whole lot of anti-immigration stuff into the heads of black people. Okay? We got to fight the immigrants. We got to fight the Latinos. We got to do that because they're going to come here and take our place. Just what Trump said. They're going to come here and take your black jobs. Well, isn't it ironic that the pro-black imposters literally repeat what Trump is saying? Which is, if Latinos come here and we don't fight them, what's going to happen? They're going to get ahead of us. Right? Well, let me say, if they get ahead of us, that means we're not taking advantage of some of the opportunities that our forefathers have fought for us to have. Right? We have the Civil Rights Act. We have the Voting Rights Act. We have the Fair Housing Act. We have so many other rights that we didn't have 70 years ago that we have now that we got to take advantage of. Many of us are not. I know we deal with a lot of systemic racism. Systemic racism is a huge problem and an impediment to full black equality. I get that, and I'm not dismissing that. Why would I? I'm a civil rights lawyer. I know the racism that we deal with. I fight it in court every day. But we could do a better job taking advantage of some of the opportunities that we do have. Do we need more laws? Yes. That's why we're continuing to fight. But we should not become or see ourselves as adversaries to immigrant communities. Now, we want everybody to come in here legally and do it the right way. And people who are deported because they're in the country legally, I mean, we get that. That they should do it the right way. Even a lot of Latinos agree with that. But we shouldn't have this just general animus against immigrant communities. I remember once I was representing a young Hispanic woman. She was about 25 years old with 2 children, and she was charged with a misdemeanor. And ICE had a hold on her, and was about to deport her. So I'm not an immigration lawyer, so I got an immigration lawyer involved in my representation of this young woman. And I asked, now, by the way, her parents brought her into the country illegally. Right? She had nothing to do with that. Didn't know anything about that. I think she was like 1 year old when she got here. And I asked her, well, do you speak Spanish? No. Have you ever been to Mexico? Never. She was as American as we are. Yet they were about to deport her. See, now that sort of thing there just doesn't make any sense. Right? That's why we need immigration reform. And you remember there was a bipartisan bill recently, last year, that both Democrats and Republicans worked on to put forth a good immigration reform bill that Trump blocked through Mike Johnson, the speaker. You remember that? But the point is, white supremacy is our issue, not immigrants. White supremacy is their issue, not blacks. And I know, absolutely, I know that there are immigrants that are in this country who do not like us as black people. But guess what? We're not asking them to like us. And we don't have to like them to form a coalition against our common enemy. We're not talking about joining hands and singing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, thank God. We're not talking about that. This is not a kumbaya type of thing. This is strategic. This is non-white people, and even white people can take part in what I'm talking about, so long as the goal is to defeat white supremacy, which I've given you the definition. In fact, do I have it here? It is. Let me read it. White supremacy is a satanically black-backed global system of domination in which European nations and their descendants have long maintained control of power and wealth through interconnected institutions, systems, policies, strategies, and militarization designed to uphold a racial hierarchy that privileges whiteness and subjugates non-white continents, nations, and people groups, especially Africa and its diaspora. That's the enemy. We're not each other's enemy. That's the enemy. White supremacy is the enemy. Asians are not our enemies. Latinos are not our enemies, and we're not their enemies. Now, I know I'm not naive, okay? I've been on this planet 63 years. I'm a civil rights lawyer. I'm an educated man. I read. So you're not talking to or listening to an unlearned person. I've been around the block. I'm from the South. I went through Jim Crow. The last parts of it, I did. I went through it. So I know that there is racism even between these non-white groups. And I know some of them don't like us. And some of us don't like them. But there's a higher purpose here. There's a higher purpose. There's a higher purpose of defeating a common enemy, which is white supremacy. So we need to work toward building a black, brown, and non-white, and even white progressive coalition. It can work. It can work, and it has worked, and we need it now more than ever. We don't need 20% of young black men and 20% of young Latino men fighting each other while voting for Trump and a white supremacist movement. That's not what we need. Once again, we don't need 20% of young black men, 20% of young Latino men fighting each other while supporting the white supremacist Project 2025 agenda. Just think about how asinine that is, how nonsensical that is. All right, number 9, the I, impact voting. Impact voting is not voting the couch. It is not voting for MAGA. It is voting for the Democratic Party in very high numbers so that we, African Americans, can take control of the party. Because we are the largest voting bloc. It's just like it's like the NFL. 77% of the NFL's workforce are young black men. Yet we don't control the doggone thing. They should be working through their collective bargaining process, through other ways to control a much larger share as well as decision making of the NFL. And that's what we should do with the Democratic Party. Now, the Democratic Party, again, has done some great things for us over the last 100 years. But we see here that we need to take over the party so we can get even more done. We don't do that by sitting out or voting for the opposition. We do that through impact voting. That is voting upwards of about 80%, at least 80, 90% of us for the Democratic ticket. And if your fear is, well, they're going to take advantage of us or they're going to take us for granted. Not if we are voting at 80 and 90%, because then we can do what? Take it over. Put our candidates in there. Put our neighbors in there. In this seat or that seat, in this office or that office. If we're voting at those numbers, we can take control of this. I've been saying it now for several years. We can take control of the Democratic Party. It has what we need to advance our agenda. I heard somebody the other day repeat this. So yeah, they'll take advantage of us and take us for granted if we're not voting, if we're sitting out elections, if we are voting, then we're not active in trying to take control of the party. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, that day is over. That day is over. We're going to impact vote because we're going to organize, we're going to mobilize, we're going to strategize, we're going to unite. And not leave our political future in the hands of the Democratic Party any longer without us being in control and in charge of the Democratic Party. The GOP is not going to do anything. They're going to oppose everything, because they are committed and have been. I'm about to release a video and show you that they have been committed to the GOP to white supremacy for decades. These are facts, folks. Facts. Facts. I deal in facts. I don't deal in emotions and feelings. Let me put it this way, because you obviously see me being emotional right now, but my emotions are based on facts. Based on the data, the research. You know what I'm doing most evenings? I'm reading. I'm reading 5 or 6 books at the time, all the time. The next thing, the end and win is never quit the struggle. You cannot imagine how important that is, because there are some in our community who thinks the struggle is over, done. Why do they think that? Because generations before this generation got out and made the sacrifices to give them the rights they have now, and they take those rights for granted. So in their minds, the fight is over. Coretta Scott King said, freedom is never won. Each generation must fight for it and win it in their generation. You have seen some in this generation, this younger generation, step away from the fight at the behest of pro-black imposters, and look at the result. And more is coming. I told you a little while ago, Trump was coming for young black men. He's coming now. I told you. I told you about Project 2025. While the pro-black imposters were telling you, oh, there's nothing to Project 2025. Don't worry about that. Who's right? Never quit the struggle. We will forever be in a struggle with white supremacy in this white supremacist country. They never quit. They never sleep. They never stop fighting. They never stop strategizing. They never stop organizing, unifying, funding, and giving money. Never, ever, ever, ever. They are committed to this. We can never join their side or quit the struggle, because when we do, they will step in and advance the ball that much further in their direction. Whether you like it or not, we're in a struggle with evil, a satanically backed white supremacist system. And oh, by the way, that's why we need God's help. All right? So, there it is. Fight to win. Fight to win. That's what we got to do. And I told you what that acronym stands for. And it's exactly what we must do. Focus on our youth. F, invest. I, grow the number of black businesses. G, H, harness a robust legal challenge to Project 2025 through our financial support. T, turn from disinformation to the experts. T and 2, turn to the Lord and his kingdom. We cannot do this without them. And by the way, the Project 2025 that we're fighting now, it is supported by white evangelical Christians, white Christian nationalists. So this is a spiritual fight that we're fighting. So we can't do it just in our strength as we fight them. So don't turn away from this video or away from this channel or the movement because it is a Christian-based movement. The O and 2 is organize, mobilize, unify, so we can build a strong movement like they've done. The W and win work to build a coalition. I, impact voting, N, never quit the struggle. I am Reverend Civil Rights Attorney Augustus Corbett. You're going to hear more from me about this in the coming days and months. But for now, thank you for watching this video. Those of you who especially watched it all the way to the end, thank you. You did yourself and our community a favor. And always remember, stay woke.